I'm Joe Halco, Director of Community Relations for Northwestern Counseling and Support Services, and welcome to another episode of NCSS Here for You. Since 1958, Northwestern Counseling and Support Services has been providing access to high-quality services which promote healthy living and emotional well-being to the residents of Franklin and Grand Isle counties. Over the years, as the needs of the community have changed, so too have the programs and services that we make available to assist children, adolescents, adults, families, and seniors. We take our role in the community seriously and strive to provide a continuum of the highest quality services to meet the needs of individuals who at any point seek assistance. The month of April is Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month. Autism spectrum disorder is made up of a group of complex neurodevelopment disorders resulting in repetitive patterns of behavior and difficulties with social communication and interaction. The symptoms are present from early childhood and can affect daily functioning. Individuals with autism have widely different abilities. Some children with autism spectrum disorder may have a serious lifelong disability. However, with appropriate treatment and training, some children can develop certain aspects of independence in their lives. To discuss the various programs and services that NCSS provides individuals diagnosed with an autism spectrum disorder, I'm pleased to introduce this month's guests. Shauna Shappy, School-Based Autism Team Leader, Megan Gargano, School-Based Autism Team Leader, and April Brooks, Applied Behavior Services Team Leader. I'd like to welcome all of you to the show this month. So it's great to have all of you here. And let's start with, the school-based program is known to provide applied behavior analysis services within a public school setting. Can you talk about what this looks like on a daily basis?
Yeah, absolutely. So our program provides services to individuals from preschool, so the age of 3 and 4, all the way up to the age of 22. Our job is really to design programming to teach functional skills, life skills, decrease maladaptive behaviors that are really impacting their ability to access their education and be in the classroom with their peers. And really to be as independent as they can be. So our job is to assign one-on-one behavior interventionists to work with students throughout their school day to be able to work on whatever those goals are that the child has for themselves, the family has, the school team. We also have the ability to provide services outside of the school building. We do a lot of community programming, working on life skills, pre-vocational skills for some of our high school students, kind of trying to prepare them for that transition into adulthood. And we work closely with our clients, the families, the school teams, occupational therapists and speech and language pathologists and special educators to design a really individualized behavior plan supported through applied behavior analysis, as well as just a comprehensive plan to work on all of their goals with their IEP for them to be successful in the public school.
And you mentioned one thing, Shauna, that's rather interesting, I think a lot of people wouldn't realize, is the incredible collaboration between many individuals.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of our school teams are very large. There are a lot of players at the table, which is great because I think, our expertise in applied behavior analysis really goes with everything with teaching language skills. And so all of the goals that this child has, we're able to then generalize throughout their day. So the BI is not just working on teaching pro-social skills and decreasing maladaptive skills, but they're also working on toileting and they're working on language and, communication devices and things like that the child might have, as well as their academics. We do provide a lot of academic support, modifying academics if they're not at their same age peer level. So we do a lot of that academic support in the classroom as well.
Now, how does Applied Behavioral Services use applied behavioral analysis to support all of our clients?
Yeah, so the Applied Behavior Services team provides early intensive applied behavior analysis services to children diagnosed with autism or other developmental disabilities. Early intensive services means that we serve children birth to through 8 years of age. And often our program and services look like kind of that first stop as far as maybe programs that children might be receiving from getting a diagnosis of autism. So we might be supporting a family understanding their child's diagnosis in the beginning, and then from there really the first folks that are able to provide a mode of communication that might work for the child. And then teaching the family how that mode of communication can be used at home so that the child can get their wants and needs met. So it's really about teaching the value of communication early on, which is a really rewarding part of the work that we do. And then from there, we also focus on early play skills, early social interactions. We focus on life skills similar to what Shauna had mentioned, so things like hand washing or toothbrushing.
Critically important certainly is the child, but also the parents and
Yeah.
their understanding of how to work with their child.
Yeah, and being home and community-based, that's really our goal, is to make sure that it's not just about the goals that we have identified for the child. It's really a collective effort between us and the family, and what we as the team have identified is important to work on and meaningful for them. One other piece of our services that's important to note is that being home and community-based, we do have a center located on Houghton Street in St. Albans that we do provide applied behavior analysis, or ABA for short, services out of the center. But we also go into homes throughout Franklin and Grand Isle County and provide services. And then we're also in the community, so it's really wherever the need is. If the need is to really support a child in the grocery store with maybe bolting behavior, for instance, like we're going to go to the grocery store and we're going to work on that behavior in that environment. So it's really about making sure that the skills we're teaching are transferable to wherever the need is.
You know, one of the things as you talk about home and community, I think for a lot of people, one of the misnomers is they think that everything occurs within our buildings, and that
Right.
couldn't be further from the truth.
Exactly.
That it's really 90-some% is done in the community itself,
Yeah.
meeting people where they're at.
Yep, absolutely.
So, how do you determine what your programming looks like, and what is the ultimate goal of school-based autism programming?
Yeah. So we have this running joke that we make at IEP meetings or with parents or with service providers, that our ultimate goal is really to work ourselves out of a job, which sounds really scary when you kind of make that statement, but the principle behind it is really to be able to join a team and teach a skill only until we're not needed to teach or support that skill anymore. The goals that we create for that student, that child, that individual is really team-centered. So it's what that child might, like Shauna was saying, it might be what that child wants as a goal for themselves, or what their parents are interested in supporting them in learning or developing to support them in being successful in their community, and not just their school community, but their local community and their home, in the home setting. Really looking for ways to identify what's going to be meaningful for them, and then base how we create programming to achieve those goals off of those questions. The ultimate goal is really to support people in learning skills for them to be independent, and for them to have things that are meaningful to them. And what's meaningful for one individual is going to be vastly different to the next person that we were on, whatever team we're on. And I think we do a really intentional job of looking at what is the individualized goal, or what is that team looking for support from us. As we sit on those at those tables with those teams and those families, our intent is never to tell them what they should be working on. It's really to ask questions to see how we can support them in reaching their own goals.
Now, you had said, used an acronym, and I know we know IEP, but could you explain for the audience, what that stands for and why it's so important?
So IEP stands for Individualized Educational Program. And it is really a tool used by schools to outline the services, accommodations, and needs of a child or a student that might need something different to access the same level of education as their peers. So it's a process where teams get together, parents, families, service providers, and they look at what are the needs of that student, and then they it all kind of comes together in this IEP process, and that tool, that document follows that student throughout school to ensure that they're accessing their education appropriately.
Now, how are parents involved with the services that are being provided?
Yeah, so for our program being home and community based, we touched on it a little bit earlier, but essentially parents are at the center of what we do. Meaning that often we're maybe conducting an initial assessment with a child and able to give a snapshot of where the child's skills are. And then from there, it's sitting down with parents to really identify what's meaningful for you, what would you like to work on, and then coming up with a plan or coming up with goals and behavioral programming that work for them. With that said, from there, we typically have weekly or even bi-weekly meetings and check-ins with families. So it's an ever-evolving process, meaning if we might start working on a goal and we might check in with the family and it might not be going well. And so we really have to sit down and talk about what are we going to revise? Like, let's make sure that this works for you in the home. And then we'll change things up and we'll make sure that it's an appropriate program goal for the child and that things are starting to move in the right direction. So they're really, again, at the center of programming for the Applied Behavior Services team. With that said, I would even go a step further and say that we work really hard to have service providers be part of the larger team as well. So meaning we don't want to be working on separate goals than what the speech and language pathologist is working on. We want to make sure that our goals are complementary and that the child's really able to succeed because we're really working together effectively as a team. So that's a high priority for us as well.
That again, talking about this whole collaborative effort with all different providers that are necessary, and as you said, making sure everybody's on the same page so that it's most importantly not confusing for the child.
Exactly. And I think we do a really good job as a community of providers understanding the importance of that and working together effectively, which is great.
And that continuum of services too is great with the Applied Behavior Services team. With the birth to 8, we have some overlap there with a child who might also be on our team. And so that kind of preschool, kindergarten, up to even like 3rd grade, if they also have ABS as a service, we have an even better gateway into the home services that are happening, and even more collaboration that can happen as well, which has really been great.
Yeah. And we're able to really help support that transition. So maybe they're transitioning out of that early intensive phase, and we're able to collaborate effectively with the school-based team and make sure that the parent feels like that's a really smooth transition and doesn't feel clunky on their end as well.
And I think for both of our programs too, that there are often times where a client will have services not just amongst our programs, but then other services at the agency. So while our programs are really intentional about how we collaborate with each other, then we also collaborate with other services at the agency too to kind of achieve the same goal. So we do a lot of just collaboration in general, whether that's an internal NCSS service or if it's a school service provider or somebody else too.
And hopefully that feels seamless for parents. That's our goal.
Yeah, I was going to say that as well, from a parent's perspective, I think the more that they feel everybody's on board and rowing in the same direction, the easier it would be for them, because they're already, depending on how many children they have in the family, and that there might be one child who is on the spectrum and all their other children are not, so they are not geared right away to understand, how to effectively work with this child.
Yeah.
So the pandemic has certainly caused unprecedented disruption over the past 2 years. And what impact has COVID had on the service delivery of the autism programming?
Yeah, I think the last 2 years has changed a lot of things for all of us in many ways. It's actually kind of incredible to sit here and reflect back on that day in March, because I specifically remember what I was doing and where I was when all the schools shut down. And I think that we at the time thought, okay, this is going to be a couple of weeks of, gap in services. So what does that look like? And then little did we know we were going to be setting up workspaces at our home and working day and night to flip all of our programming to work through a computer screen, and Zoom now is kind of a part of our regular language, but it wasn't 2 years ago. And so just kind of figuring out how do we think outside the box and get creative to make sure that kids still have access to services during this time, and how crucial that was. And so for some of our students that worked okay, being able to do remote services, and some actually thrived and loved it. And then others, it really was not accessible for them. And we were also having to collaborate with parents in ways that our program typically doesn't, because, you know, all of a sudden we were coaching them on how to be their child's BI in their home through a computer screen, you know, and how to prompt and redirect really escalated behaviors at some points, and, you know, how to run their token board and their visual schedule and all of these things that our BIs do during the day through this little screen. And so it was kind of surreal to think about what all of that looked like and how quickly, you know, we were able to achieve that. But then also really realizing that about maybe a month in or so, that a lot of our students still needed the in-person services. So we were granted the ability to begin in-person services pretty quickly in NCSS conference rooms and a community space that we had as well. And our staff were just incredible, and, you know, we were showing up to work in gloves and masks and shields and doing all of a sudden we were screeners and had all of these other roles that we didn't have. Yeah. And a lot of the teaching and programming at that time, it was less about you know, their IEP goals, reading and writing and all of that. And it was more about teaching kids how to wear a mask and social distancing. And we're teaching them all these new social rules that didn't exist before. So that was kind of a shift in what our goals were at the time. And it was pretty cool to hear from parents as well, parents who said, you know, my child is never going to be able to wear a mask, you know, like it's not going to happen. And how long it took, but we had kids who, you know, were then wearing masks all day, every day, really successfully, and following kind of all of those social nuances that came with COVID restrictions. And so that was really impactful. And I think our summer camp services for 2020 were also not like any other. We tried to make up for some lost services. We added an extra week, but it was really all kind of back to basics. We weren't able to do groups. It was a lot of outside time, but I think what I remember most specifically too is just the energy and the morale, regardless of not only our staff but also the kids. And you couldn't see people's smiles, you know, under their masks, but I think that summer had a really huge impact and just kind of reminded us all what we're here for, you know, like we were forced to take a pause and remember what was important and just boil things down to that. So it was really as challenging as these last 2 years have been. I think we've learned a lot. It pushed us outside of our comfort zone. Here we are now, like without masks on, or, you know, optional in schools and all of that. And we've kind of adapted some of those new systems that at the time we were forced to do, but now are, you know, things like Zoom and some remote learning and some remote meetings and things like that. We actually have access to parents a little bit more than we did before. Just because it's more convenient to be able to do that. And some parents that it was a hardship for them to be able to come into school meetings. Yeah. Now school meetings, they're still on Zoom or Google Meets or whatever, and parents are actually able to participate more. So I think that we did learn a lot, and I could talk forever about the last 2 years, but
it's just a nice perspective to that first summer that we did summer services. It wasn't just about providing the service we've always provided. It was providing a service that was needed, and what our kids' needs were very different that summer. And it was about meeting them where they were at, and not necessarily making sure that we checked all those boxes, reached all those goals, met all these, you know, all of these things that we had set for the kids, and all of these, you know, aspirations that their parents had or whatever the school team wanted, but really just embracing the situation that we were in and just providing a space for them to have fun, and really just keep them safe while they could do that and have a little bit of an in-person connection, especially after having remote sessions and remote services and not being able to see people for a really extended period of time. And we're even seeing a lot of impact on the excessive remote learning that we were just forced into with our students now. And a lot of them, you know, some skills regressed, some skills, you know, were not even applicable anymore. You know, I think about kids that we work on group participation, and there's not really an opportunity to work on that. So what is our focus? And that's what sticks out for me with that first year of summer camp, is that we weren't necessarily focused on what that goal was, or what we had intended, because everything was so different, and just kind of meeting kids where they were at and just giving them time to have fun.
And it makes me think about, we had to get incredibly creative, incredibly fast.
Yes. Yes.
So in thinking about, teaching communication skills, and all of a sudden there's a mask mandate in place. And a big part of learning communication is being able to see facial expressions and being able to see somebody's mouth movement.
Sure.
So we did things like getting masks that had, the clear mouthpiece, so that we could hopefully better teach children. And I'm incredibly proud of our staff, who were super flexible, but also our parents, who were incredible. They were like superheroes through this pandemic, because we were, rushing around, flipping into a telehealth model, which was brand new to us, but they were equally flexible, figuring out how to do that on their end as well. Our staff were putting together materials that maybe kids were coming to the center prior and getting services through a behavior specialist, and now mom's the behavior specialist, and we're dropping materials off at home, and she again is that superhero behind the computer, running the session collaboratively with us. So it was just a really challenging time, but also I think a really proud moment for everybody to be able to be as successful as possible. And we did continue that face-to-face service for those kids that needed it still, because not everybody could do telehealth successfully.
Yeah.
So.
It's when you were speaking, like, that's the word that came to mind for me too, is proud. Like, just to think about what our teams were able to pull off, in large in part due to our BIs, our one-on-ones, the people that are there every day working with those kids, to give them a level of consistency when nothing was consistent and things changed on a daily basis. And so it's just really, like what you were saying, it's really nice to reflect back now, because it kind of in the thick of it, and you're, it's just a whirlwind of just things changing and just chaos, and to look back at it now and have that sense of pride and be really proud of our team for the work that they've done it's really great. And parents have given us that feedback too, around how much they appreciated what we were able to achieve, knowing that it wasn't what we wanted to do, but it was still, as best as we could do, and parents gave a lot of positive feedback around that.
Yeah, an amazing, I think Shauna said it earlier, we could talk about that question.
Yeah. Not that we want to, because
No,
we're,
but I mean,
we're moving forward.
But you've really you've given everybody a good sense of the challenges, and still being able to make it happen. And speaking of that, for 6 years, each spring, we had held the Autism Walk, the NCSS Autism Walk, which is certainly a cause-related event to raise awareness and acceptance of autism. But due to COVID, we had to put the walk on hold the last couple of years. However, last year you were very creative in coming up with a way to keep children and families engaged. Tell us a little bit about what you did in place of having a walk.
Yeah, I think that it's really great to be sitting here with April and Shauna too, because we're all on the committee together with you, Joe, and it's just really cool to continue to reflect back on that now and still feel really excited about it, because I think we didn't know what it was going to look like or end up being, and we put everything we could into it to try to be creative and use technology to the best of our abilities, even as exhausted as people were with using technology and Zoom fatigue and only seeing people remotely, but really prioritizing health and safety and making sure that we were still able to achieve the goal of what the Autism Walk represents, and engaging with our community members, but doing it and having fun with it, and not just fun for the people that we're trying to reach out to, but then also really fun for us. We had a lot of fun doing that, and I think that we learned some really creative ways that we could reach out to people remotely. I think we did a lot of live videos and streaming of events and read-alouds and offering parent workshops and different trainings that we wouldn't otherwise offer at the walk, because it's a one-day event. And so we took this really unideal situation and expanded it to this really cool, creative, broader way to provide a support. And that was that was kind of the heart of our goal when we were planning the Autism Walk, and how are we going to achieve that same goal. And I think we did a pretty good job. I really, the best part was seeing the kids on the other side of the screen engaging. It just was so cool, like to see them get really excited about the silly things that we were doing or the fun activities. We had a lot of folks show up at the event for the grab bags to get the materials for it. So we did a lot of just different stuff that we had never explored before, just to keep that sense of connection.
Yeah, I have to say it was an incredible week. I don't think you could have done it any better under the circumstances. And you're right, using all types of technology, including Facebook Live and all that streaming and everything else that you did. Even the handing out of the bags initially, you were concerned about safety and everything, and people drove through. And
Yeah.
I mean, everything was done with safety, number one. And then number two, what is going to be the best way to get engagement? And once again, using the technology to your advantage to be able to make that connection was extremely creative.
Yeah, and I think we learned some really fun stuff that, had we not been put in that position, we wouldn't have, been forced to be as creative as we were. And I think we learned a lot of cool stuff that we could continue to incorporate in, for Autism Awareness and Acceptance Month and our Autism Walk, and just taking some of the stuff that has come from that situation into, and continuing it, because it's not just something we had to do just because of the circumstances, but something we want to continue to do because it actually worked really well.
So that now takes us to, after the 2-year hiatus, an Autism Walk is being scheduled this year for June the 5th at Collins Pearly Sports and Fitness Center. And speaking of fun and activities and all that, what types of activities are being planned? I mean, people understand what a walk is, but of course this is so much more than that time that's dedicated to the short walk itself.
Yeah, last year was a lot of fun, but we are excited to be back in person this year for a more traditional walk. We're going to be setting up by the playground at Collins Pearly Sports Center, and so of course the playground will be a part of our activities. But we're also going to have a photo booth, and which will be free for people that are there to be able to take some silly photos, which is great. And then we're going to have arts and crafts and lawn games and sensory and music station, and of course the walk itself will be I guess we have to decide, but depending on how muddy it is, if we'll do it on the track or if we'll do it around, but
Sure.
But we'll have music and games, and we hope for good weather and an even better turnout than before. We have the kind of a different focus a little bit on not only autism awareness and kind of the traditional, what people see as the puzzle piece symbol and the color blue, but also adding in autism acceptance and the color red to represent that, and our new logos and new tie-dye t-shirts, which we're really excited about, will show the rainbow infinity symbol for autism acceptance, and kind of supporting that community as well. So there'll be a bouncy house too, and food, of course.
Barbecue.
Yes. Missing Piece Bakery will be selling
Yes.
her delicious cookies, and we'll also be doing an art auction again. So our clients that are creating some art pieces, and those will be available for people to bid on there at the walk. And you can get a pledge form ahead of time, or we also have our Facebook donation page, which kind of came out of us learning from last year's online virtual week.
Yep.
And then all the proceeds will go towards autism programming. So we hope to have a large group and plenty of sunshine.
That's the hope.
That's
you know?
the
Yes.
hope.
But I think
yes.
it's important to note, though, that if it isn't sunny and if it is raining, which we're
Yes.
not looking forward to, is that everything will still take place. It'll just go indoors into the ice rink.
Yes.
So
Yep.
at least we have that option. Of course, the playground wouldn't be available, but the hope is that it's going to be a nice day. And certainly, this is the latest that we've held the walk. Typically, we would do it in the month of May. So hopefully, better weather will be ahead. And to your point, Sean, I hope we have, our greatest turnout yet. I know a lot of people, this pent-up demand to get out, that people just, as we all know, we've all been in that situation where so many things that we would have done over the last 2 years, we just haven't been able to. And hopefully things like this type of an event, people will really aspire to be involved in. So, it is a great day. It's for the right reasons, for all the great work that your teams do, and the funds certainly are used 100% to autism programming. So, it's pretty good. So, with that, believe it or not, our time is up, and I know we could talk all day long about various aspects and the great work that you and your teams do. For the community, which is just incredible work and very difficult work. And I'm sure that the families, if they were here, would thank you for everything that you do for their children and themselves. So with that, I want to thank my guests, Shauna Shapi, Megan Gargano, and April Brooks, for sharing their insights on the services that NCSS provides that make a difference in the lives of individuals diagnosed with an autism spectrum disorder and their families. I also want to thank you, the viewer, for spending time with us again this month. You can learn more about the upcoming NCSS Autism Walk, plus all of our programs and services, by visiting ncssinc.org. I'm Joe Halco, and I'll be back next month with another episode of NCSS Here for You.